Hey everyone, it's Rye bringing you a new video where I will be discussing lib2 Piety. I recently just played a game as Sanai, and it occurred to me that I actually never uploaded a video on how to perform this, when you want to perform it, what to think about when you are performing it. So it just seemed right to make this kind of video. I think it's a very niche type strategy, and yeah, I think it's something that it's very easy to mess up really, really, really bad. But if you kind of get the hang of it and understand what to look for, it can be a good tool to have in your arsenal. I do think this is a very effective um, strat given in certain circumstances. That being said, this is not an every time thing. This is not something that you should be thinking about every time. More so, have it as an idea in the back of your head, and when the stars align, that's when you pick it. All right. So with that, let's just jump right in. So as you guys are well aware, lib2 piety means you're going two policies into Liberty, and then to get the settler building policy, probably one of the best policies in the whole game. And then following that settler policy, we're going to go fill out all of Piety. Then later on in the game, we have Liberty to fill out, which, as you guys know, has the worker, which isn't super important for this thing because you're only, getting that worker later is not super important. But then we also have a ton of happiness in the road happy policy, and then representation, which is 33% reduction in policy cost, as well as a number of great people that we can select upon finishing all of Liberty. So fantastic scaling tree. Effectively just gives you a free scientist later in the game, which is kind of the whole point. But there are some problems with this, as you might assume. So let's think about what weaknesses Piety has as a whole. So for starters, as everyone knows, Piety is the slow start tree. When you select Piety, what does that entail? It means I'm going to build shrines and temples. I'm going to rely on my religion to carry me, and I'm not going to get anything for free for the most part. I might get one faith per turn for free. Compare that to Liberty, which is giving you one base hammer in every single one of your cities. A number of other tools, such as building infrastructure modifiers and other stuff like that. So Piety's super weak, super slow, not a lot of hammers early on, etc. Okay, what else does it do? GPT problems. This is renowned for Piety. People always complain about GPT problems on Piety. You're bleeding gold constantly, and you're kind of just racing to finish Piety and whatever. Slow early science. You have to tech to philosophy. Philosophy is a pretty dead tech. All you're unlocking is the ability to build temples. So, teching philosophy, and then you have to go back and backfill important techs that you may have missed out on, like trapping in some cases, or the wheel, or then going to engineering, or horseback riding, or whatever it might be. You have limited workers, right? Piety, you just have less workers because you have less hammers. You're very reliant on worker steals, number of different problems. And then, as mentioned before, but you have happy problems until you get Mandate of Heaven. Because you have a lack of workers, your happy timing is typically something that you want to watch out for. So getting your luxes improved on time is very important. So those are all the Piety weaknesses. I don't have to talk about the Piety strengths because I'll talk about that in a little bit. But let's think about what Liberty weaknesses have. So Liberty weaknesses. GPT problems. So you're very dependent on getting that road happy policy, which gives you more gold from city connections. Representation, which makes your monuments free and puts you in a golden age. So it depends on until you start your golden age for GPT problems, or road happy, or when you get your roads up. And remember, if you're combining these, you don't have a lot of workers, so doing this stuff is hard. Happy problems until road happy. You are constantly going unhappy. You're constantly like teetering on that line of I'm gonna scale, like I'm gonna go unhappy if I settle the city type of thing. And then your scaling is very land dependent on Liberty, and it's one of the main reasons people pick Wide Piety at all is because your scaling gets improved so much. All right, so what happens when we combine these two? Right, that's the whole idea. So if we combine them, we are doubling down. We are doubling down on GPT problems. We're pretty much saying, you know, I if I do this, I am going to have GPT problems 100% of the time. We are doubling down on happiness problems because if we're doing this, we are not getting any of the happy policies for a very long time. At least until policy 5, right? Lib opener, or sorry, not including lib opener. So lib opener, lib 1, lib 2, piety opener, and then you have to go for divine inspiration first. Not divine inspiration. Whatever the, I think it's divine judgment, whatever the one faith and one culture from shrines and temples is, and then go to mandate. So that's policy 6, actually, not 5. So you're double downing on happiness problems. You're slower to key policies, like I just mentioned before. The key policy you're going for is lib 2. Piety policies really don't work like that well until the religion's online. You have chunky build queues, right? You're building shrines and temples and a bunch of other shit. You have really, really strong scaling. Like you're gonna be wide, but you're gonna have the benefit of piety, and you're gonna have a lot of other stuff like really, really online. And you're very vulnerable early. You think wide piety is vulnerable? This might be a little better, maybe, but not by much. So, yeah. So, but when do you do this instead of just straight wide piety? And I think this is one of the most important questions that a lot of people don't really know how to answer. It's more of like a feel question for me. The main thing I look for is on low hammer starts. If I have like 2 hills in my whole cap, and I have a ton of land, but I know it's not Liberty land, it's Piety land, that's when I'll consider this. And I have a good example in my recent Songhai game, actually. I did have this exact circumstance where I had not a lot of hills to work with, but I had a ton of optionality in like settled locations, but none of them really were on rivers. None of them had like a lot of inherent scaling. So, wanted to go piety, but if I went piety, I would have I just fucking undid this recording. I'm just gonna edit it, whatever. Second thing you want to consider is you have to be very isolated. This is a non-negotiable. You think, like I said before, like wide piety can kind of function because it gets the religion online pretty fast. This does not get the religion online fast. This is a pretty slow religion unless you take a faith path. And if you take a faith path, then you're kind of like, what's the point of even opening piety? So, yeah, number of things, but you really need to be very isolated. And then the last thing, and this is the next thing I'll talk about, but you have to be on a select civ, okay? Non-negotiable in my opinion, but you have to be on a piety-specific civ, typically one that gives a ton of temple-specific beliefs or temple buffs. So, and we're going to talk about that in a second, but you need to be on those select civs to even like consider this, because otherwise you're going to have a really, really, really hard game, and you're not going to be given enough free stuff to make up for all the things you're doing to absolutely ruin it. Okay. So let's talk about the civs that I think you should consider. So the first one is Byzantium. This is one of my personal favorite civs to do this on. I've done this in a tournament game, actually, and it went really, really well. It works extremely well if there's no other piety player. But if there's another piety player, you can do it just fine. But the reason Byzantium's so good is because of the extra belief it gets. It allows you to double down on catch-up mechanics, so you don't feel as bad as taking like double temple beliefs, because then you can also get like pagodas or something like that to help your game. Or it doesn't. Okay, I think I'm back. My microphone died. Dude, This is such a shit show. Like this is such like a throwback to when I used to make these. Okay, anyway. Uh, that being said, so it gets or like I said before, but maybe you could do like a couple buildings because you'll still get the benefit of having you know like at least one demo belief or something like that. And then you also don't feel as bad taking swords over indulgences because you're getting your religion online later. So it's just fine. Okay. What does this mean for this for Byzantium though? Your cities have more hammers than they normally would. So if you're going wide piety Byzantium, you're not going to build your amphitheaters. It's actually pretty common that in this type of Byzantium, you actually do have those hammers. It's harder to execute than than some of the other civs, and it leans towards faith path because you really want to get your religion, especially so on Byzantium because of the extra belief. So contesting important beliefs is even more important because you can get even more of the good ones, if that makes sense. Okay, let's talk about the next civ, and this is obviously one of the civs I was going to talk about. It's actually the civ I just played this on, but Sanai. Sanai gets 2 culture from their temples and has no maintenance. That is huge. On their temples. That means you will not have gold problems in a traditional sense that piety typically has. So with that in mind, you're eliminating one of the key issues that it would normally have. Then the culture that you get from the temples actually helps to finish piety, which is amazing. And it works so perfectly together because finishing piety is the engine that actually gets this build going. So the culture that you get from the temples is actually really, really good. And then because you're Songhai and because you're piety, you have incredibly good late game scaling. You're going to be wide. You're going to be very strong. So Songhai, great civ for this. The next civ, this is a no-brainer. Egypt. I don't really need to talk about this much. You get 2 happy and no gold maintenance. This fixes the happiness problems and it fixes the gold problems. It's effectively Lib 2 Piety on training wheels. If you're going to practice this strat, I would highly recommend starting with Egypt before you do anything else. Egypt is the easiest civ in the game to do this on. It's it's probably like one of the most effective too because it lets you be a lot more greedy than you normally would. Gives you everything you need. If you don't have a lot of workers, but you might get like I don't know, killed early. You could potentially build a chariot early. Like there's a lot going for Egypt that helps you navigate the early game and make it to that mid game and late game where you're going to be incredibly strong. And then lastly, I thought I'd throw this in here. This is not a civ I would typically consider this on. This is by far the hardest to execute on. But if you can get it to work, it's going to be amazing, right? And it's not Songhai, Sumeria. So what does Sumeria give you on their temples? On their ziggurats will give you 10% science. Instead of having 2 gold maintenance, it'll be 1. So this is why this civ is tricky because the gold problems still will exist to some extent. It won't be as bad, but it'll be pretty bad still. The 10% science is the biggest bait in the game. This is such a good belief when this is such a good bonus when all of your cities are making like 30 science, right? That's like 3 extra science per city. It's like pretty good, pretty significant. Obviously in your capital and in other cities, it's going to be even better. But for the most part, the 10%, once each city has enough pop to warrant it, it's pretty good. 10% in the beginning of the game is actually nothing. We're talking about like 0.2 science per city. At the very most, like on turn 30, that's going to be 2 total science throughout your whole empire. That's nothing, dude. There is like little to no benefit for running this for like the science and thinking like you're gonna like get a lot out of that. Okay. That being said, it has such incredibly strong potential. Okay. Because of the culture you generate when you tech drama, you're able to finish piety incredibly quickly, similar to Songhai in a sense, but you actually Songhai is a perfect comparison. Yeah, so this is effectively just like giving you what Songhai already gave you, but now you get 10% science. So it's, think of exactly what Songhai is doing, except your science is costing 1 gold maintenance. Your 10% science is costing you 1 gold maintenance, and the drama tech. Now that might sound really good, but it's such a bait because teching to drama is so difficult on this build. Think about it. We are burning through gold like crazy. We had to tech philosophy first, and we need to make it to aqueducts or our game is going to be shit. So now we have to go from philo to engineering back up to drama. After that, you may as well just go to civil. But that's why this is so difficult, is because if you low roll on this, or you don't have like a good opener, or you're not getting a lot of worker seals or something like that, you will burn so much gold. Your game will feel like shit. And there's not much you can do about it. It's a very feast or famine type strat. So I just wanted to, I'm going to leave that there. That's all I really wanted to cover for this. I did want to showcase my early game here. All right. So this is the game I just uploaded. You'll notice I have a absolute shitload of land. I've scouted all to my right. I'm gonna fast forward here. I know this is. Right now I'm thinking. Okay, this is Liberty. Like that's what I'm thinking to myself. Okay. Then I scout here, and I'm like, huh. Well, I want a city somewhere over here. I want a city on this horse. I want a city probably on this gold. I want a city on this horse. I want a city something down here, something down here, maybe something over here. And those are actually all the cities I accept. But like, you know, when you're just looking at it, like that's what, you know, speaks to me. But I don't have any rivers really. There's not a lot of fresh water. It's not good scaling, so I want to play Piety. But how many hills do I have? Okay, this gold's flat. This gold's flat. This is a hill. This is a hill. This is a hill. I have 3 hills and a 1 horse. So I'm about to hit 6 pop because I'm getting really, really lucky here. But I don't have any hammers. Like I have 6 pop and going to be working 1 hammer tiles. Like that's not very good. So what is a way that I can circumvent this? Well, I can go Lib 2 and then into Piety, get the benefit of building settlers with the Lib 2 belief. And then I'm so isolated in this perspective, right? Thor is all the way up here. Main methods all the way to my right. I've got at least 2 cities in between us, a whole bunch of cities over here. I'm very isolated. I can easily just click Lib 2 Piety here and then just kind of chill. And that's what we end up doing. We make a couple settlers, but we're still making a bunch more with the settler policy. And that dramatically sped up our game. So then when we fast forward, I'm Lib 3, ratio 0, auto 1. It's turn 100. Building my schools. Obviously, like I mentioned this before, but it's a very good game. 400 science, no schools up. It's really, really good on turn 100. I have an extra scientist because I can finish Liberty. Oh, and by the way, I can open representation to discount all my future policies by 33%. Oh, and by the way, that'll also give me a golden age. So you can kind of see how all of this goes together and like scales crazy. Oh, and then by the way, that gives me a scientist. So it circumvents the need to ever fill out ratio because you're never going to need a ratio scientist because you get one from Liberty. You're really, really strong because you picked Piety. You've probably got a really good religion. Actually, in this case, I put Vision Quests, which was really good for circumventing happiness. And because your Pantheon usually starts later, like I don't like building a shrine before Piety opener, which isn't till like turn 30 sometimes, 32. So I'm going to be building a bunch of shrines, but they're all going to be coming up late. In that case, I don't really need that strong of an initial Pantheon, like, you know, something like Craftsman or something like settlements or whatever isn't as important, right? Because I already kind of got over that initial hurdle. So something like Goddess of Love or Vision Quest is really, really good. Okay, so that's all I want to talk about in this one. Hopefully this helps you guys with your Lib 2 Piety games. If you have any questions at all, feel free to leave them below. If you're not subscribed, don't forget to hit that sub button. Yeah, anyway, that's all I got. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.